I call this meeting of the Hurst-Euless-Bedford Independent School District to order. Let the record show that a quorum of board members is present, that this meeting has been duly called, and notice that this meeting has been posted in accordance with Texas Open Meeting Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our work session for January, and Happy New Year. Hope everyone had a good break. Tonight, the Board of Trustees is meeting in a work session board meeting. The board welcomes and appreciates comments and input from the community. Open forum is provided at each meeting to allow the public to address the board. There will be one open forum tonight to hear requests regarding agenda items only. Those addressing the board are asked to limit their comments to 3 minutes per meeting. The speaker should identify his or her name, group affiliation if any, and make a brief presentation with an identified solution if one is sought. Remarks should be addressed to the board as a whole. Oral presentations may not include charges against any employee or board member by name. It is my responsibility to determine if the person addressing the board has attempted to resolve a concern informally or through the district's complaint policies. If not, the speaker will be directed to follow the appropriate policy. The board requests that all presentations be made in a courteous, respectful, and professional manner, and asks that speakers monitor their own behavior. If you wish to speak during during the open forum, please fill out one of the cards located on the table by the entry door. Dr. Harrington, any comments?
The only comment I wanted to mention, Bel Air Elementary, the new Bel Air opened up today to students, and so we were just real excited. A number of our staff was able to get over there. I know Miss Cole got over there Monday to help with some of the setup. I've got some thank you notes from the principal about Josh's team getting that all together, and it's amazing as you see the building a few weeks out and you're like, what? And it's there, and that building is beautiful. So.
Yeah, the board had the opportunity to take a tour, and I think everyone who got to go was very impressed, and it is a really beautiful building. Any clarifications?
None at this time.
Okay, we're ready for open forum number 1. No cards. Okay, so at this time, the board's going to go into closed session pursuant to Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551. The board will adjourn to closed session pursuant to sections 551.071, 551.072, 551.074, and 551.076. board will now reconvene into open session. We're down to report 6.01. Any questions on disbursements for the month of December 2023? All right, we're ready for our architect update. Mr. Williams.
Okay, we've asked Huckabee and Corrigan to come in and kind of give us an update of where we've been, where we are, what we're doing. Just keep in mind, this is still very, very fluid. There's still lots of changes to be made, things to look at. Even our ELT, we're seeing this for the first time tonight, so we haven't even vetted this or looked at any of this stuff. But keep that in mind, and also keep in mind that if you have questions, different things, let us know. We would be happy to get you answers to those questions. We can bring them back for as much as we need to get them to clarify. I just volunteered, y'all. Anyway, so just wanted to say that. We're going to let Aubrey go first.
All right, good evening. So like Dobie said, we're early in schematic design on the first two elementary schools. And so this is not the formal schematic design presentation that we'll request for approval on down the road. This is just an update on our progress. We have met with the campus principals, with Josh and with Darla, multiple times at this point and got their input on the plan. And I know that those principals have also spoken to the principals at Oakwood Terrace and will very soon be talking to the ones at Bel Air, just kind of see how that's all functioning for them. So just to give you just an overview of each project, we've got a site plan and a floor plan to look at the initial concepts tonight. This is Hurst Hills, and again, I'm just showing the new site plans. When we get deeper into it, we'll start looking at phasing of the site plans and all of those parts and pieces. But this is just the end result of Hurst Hills. And right now, the existing campus sits right in the middle of that site where the large parking lot is. So everything, all of the new work will be south of that. And the campus is just like Oakwood Terrace and Bel Air as far as footprint, except it's mirrored. And so the entrance is on the south side where it says bus drop-off, and then you've got the two-story classroom wing to the east of that. And then as you go north is where you have the gym and the cafeteria. So we've got the bus loop in the front and the parent loop all around the back there. And then playgrounds are not immediately to the end of the classroom wings as they've been at other campuses, just from site constraints. But we still have them with pretty direct access off of that stair tower on the east to where they're not having to cross any driveways or anything to access those playgrounds. And then the hard court you'll see on the west side of the building. That is positioned a little bit differently at this campus than others at the request of the principal. When we get to the floor plan, you'll see also a tweak that we made there. The primary users of that are coming from the gymnasium, so we want to try to make that a little bit more accessible to them. So Wilshire, this is the site plan for that campus. Again, Wilshire is kind of right in the middle of the site, which either pushes the new building to the far west or the far east. And there's a little bit more room to the east here. This is probably the tightest site of all 4 elementary schools. We don't have all of the site layout precise yet, but we're probably looking at about 20 feet between the buildings during construction, so it'll be pretty tight. This one, again, the footprint is similar to Oakwood Terrace and Bel Air. Probably the biggest difference that you'll see when we get to the floor plan here is we have swapped the administration wing and the library just based on how it's oriented on the site and where the main entrance made sense. So the main entrance is on the northeast side, and then the classroom wing will go straight south from there, whereas the cafeteria and gym will be to the west of there. Playgrounds, again, pretty close off of the south end of the classroom wing. So floor plans, Hurst Hills. So again, this is mirrored from what you're used to looking at the other campuses. Classroom wing will be identical at both campuses, and the only changes that we've made since the previous iterations is adding restrooms to 2 pods of classrooms instead of 1. There's a number of special ed classrooms here, FOSSI or early childhood, And so just giving them more flexibility in those populations and pre-K and kindergarten as programs flex and change, giving those restrooms, or adding those restrooms gives them that flexibility. We've also got laundry rooms incorporated in near those multi-user restrooms at both campuses as well. As far as the tweak I was mentioning related to the hard court, you'll see on the far west side music and art and choice classrooms in yellow. We've gone from 1 choice classroom to 2 at the request of the campus. And you'll see we cut a corridor between the administration wing and those 2 choice classrooms. In the previous iterations, that corridor was up by the cafeteria and just went straight through. So this gives them more direct access from the gym out to that hard court on the left. Second floor plan, really no changes from the previous campuses. So you still have the pods of 5 classrooms per grade level. Some of those are flex classrooms if they're not needed for that many classrooms per grade level. Wilshire, like I mentioned, the biggest change here on this orientation, the main entrance is to the east. And so we flipped the administration and library, but those footprints are identical to all of the other campuses. This one also has 2 choice classrooms, but we've kept the corridor up by the cafeteria like we've have at the other campuses. We couldn't really accommodate the hard court in the same location on this campus, so we just kept it like the other previous ones. And then the other big change by moving the library over, you'll see art didn't fit over by music and choice. So now it is between the administration and the 2-story classroom wing. Pretty similar, really, in orientation to the Viridian model as far as where art is located. Second floor, identical. And then just quick overview of our schedule. Like I said, we're in the middle of schematic design right now. We've got more design meetings to be had. And then we'll bring you the schematic design update for approval at the February board meeting. And then we'll continue into design development, looking at materials and finishes, and we'll bring that to you in May. Construction documents are slated to be completed in 1st of July and out for bid that month, so that we can take bids for the subcontractors and award the GMP for these projects in August of '24. Construction will start in the fall. And like we've talked about, the intent is to open an elementary school every semester for the next 2 years, beginning January of '26. So this kind of shows the phasing of that, both for the buildings and then the sites that will follow. And then that's it for the elementary schools. Just a really quick update on 2100 Plaza and Hurst Junior High. Administration Edition, both of those projects are out to bid right now. And so we will bring the CSP to you to award again at the February board meeting. Construction timeline here is shown tentative, kind of what we anticipate, but the contractors are being allowed to bid the number of days in their submission because it's not a critical start-stop date for them. And so that will be a factor in the recommendation that is brought to you all, but anticipating a summer completion of 2100 Plaza, and Hurst Junior High will bleed into the fall a little bit. We just don't think it'll be practical to get the administration wing open during the summer, which is current lead times and things like that, but we're going to aim to do everything we can. All right, any questions from me?
Questions for Aubrey?
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening. Happy New Year. We're very excited to present Bell and Trinity High School today. Much like the previous projects, this one is also going to be a snapshot in time, which is going to be January 2024. So there's a lot of progress that's being made as we speak. You know, all of us, but you get me today. Just wanted to have a quick discussion on all of the meetings that we've had. So these are including the visioning meetings we had with the board, with the various leadership groups over at the campuses, as well as all of the administration. right before the bond election in November. And then after, we did meet with certain groups right before we wrapped up for the holidays. A lot of the focus for these meetings were just getting ready for Phase 0, which I'll talk about in a few. Phase 0 is going to be some enabling projects that needs to happen on both campuses before Phase 1. And so that's what we are working on. So we did meet with both the City of Hurst and the City of Euless to get their recommendations and thoughts on when they'd be able to issue permits, their thoughts on early packages, and so on and so forth. We did meet with the Special Education Department as well, because we did have to make some design decisions on what needs to be done in Trinity. So we met with them before the holidays. We have a plan for them as well. We've been meeting periodically with both campus principals, so we went ahead and did that before the holidays. These are all the upcoming meetings. We do have meetings with Joris, our CMAR, pretty regularly. We are excited to go meet with the Visual and Performing Arts Department tomorrow. We have a work session with Joris and Josh to talk through some of the nuances and logistics for Phase 0. But as you can tell that we've got a series of meetings with food service, getting ready to meet with the culture committees that the campus principals are looking at. Some of these dates are just our milestone dates when we shared these with Josh and some of the HEB ISD leadership. We said as long as we can make that week, we are good. So we have planned meetings up until March to get us through. And then right now, we will be in front of the board every month. But we also wanted to give you the opportunity to let us know if you would like a work session or if you would want us to be at every board meeting to give you an update. Right now, I'm here today, and I think we'll be back again in February as well for update. So these are the meetings up to March. Right now, this is all we have in the works, but there's more meetings to come after March as well. So jumping into design, just wanted to let you know that you're going to see some information that's new in this presentation. Some of it is just a refresh or an update of what you've seen in the past. Going through the Belt campus, this is a comparison on what the proposed campus is going to get. 90 core classrooms, 18 science labs, 65,000 square feet of visual and performing arts spaces, 3 gyms with 4 basketball courts, dedicated dance space, dedicated gym space, as well as an increase in the dining spaces. So as you can see, all of the current campus requirements are being superseded in the proposed design. This was the Bell site concept that we were looking at in October of 23. We included this because I wanted to share with this group that there's been some changes already, and some of it is just the orientation of the field. So we are starting to look at where the student lots are going to be. In this case, you will see that in blue, where the parent and the staff parking and drop-off is going to happen. That's indicated in red. We also have the bus loops in yellow. As we work through this, we are looking at the campus to make sure the logistics works for the campus. We do need to meet with the city as well to make sure that they are okay with some of the proposed traffic patterns. So this was in October, and if you blink, you're going to miss it. But this is what we are we've got right now. Some of the orientation of the fields switched. Some of the field sports also moved around based on input from the campus. Some of it is also based on the topography and the site conditions over at the site. We do have a dedicated band practice area that is indicated on the site plan as well. Again, just wanted to call it the concept because we are meeting with the city again. and then working with the traffic engineers that are on our team, as well as the city traffic folks as well, to make sure everything works. Some
Can I
of
ask a question real quick?
Yes.
When you get off the bus there at the bus loop, say you're going from the bus loop up to the front door over on the student parking side, how big of an elevation change is that? Because I know right now there's a bunch of steps that head up. So are you on a lower level? Assume you're on a lower level when you walk in from the bus, and then you have to like go up 1 floor or 2 floors to get to the.
So there are a series of ramps, and that's a really astute observation. There are a series of ramps and stairs within the building, because right now, the way the campus is set up, there are portions of the campus where you do need to traverse stairs or have to take an elevator or go find an elevator. Here, it's a little bit more gradual, and I can point out when we look at the floor plan.
Okay.
But because these are brand-new campuses, as you know, that we need to make them accessible. There is quite a bit of grading that also happens on both sides that will accommodate some of the grade changes that you're seeing. Right?
Okay.
I just wanted to also let everyone know that when we are looking at these staff and parent loops, we make sure that there's enough stacking on site when the students are being dropped off, because that's something we don't want to hinder traffic on the roads adjacent to the campus. Just a quick refresh on the phasing. The phasing at Bell is going to get most of phase 1 done, and then phase 2 would be tearing down the existing building. Again, much like the other projects, this is a concept, and we are working very closely with Joris to see how close we will be to the existing campus, and maybe there'll be portions of the building that will need to be complete after the existing building is taken down, but we are still working through some of those specifics right now. We had a previous discussion on what would happen if we had to add additional classrooms. So the yellow addition piece over there shows you 4 classrooms at 3 levels for a total of 12 general purpose classrooms that are indicated on the site. As you can tell, this is a pretty tight site even after the existing building comes down. And so that is what we are proposing to add in case you need to add on to the campus. So that is the site plans. Then going over to the floor plans, again, this largely looks like what your group has seen in the past. It has gone through quite a number of iterations because we are working on some of the specifics. We've had a lot of input on the layout of the administration spaces, quite a bit of input on the athletic areas. We will be meeting with athletics again in a couple of weeks, and so we go through like space by space. But to just look at the overall building party or the layout, you've got all of the athletic areas, or at least most of them, adjacent to the IAC in yellow, and then your after hours entries indicated over there, and just to the north of it, you've got your auditorium space in green, and all of the visual and performing arts in green. Adjacent to that as well, it's kind of intermingled with the athletic spaces, and all of your academic core curriculum spaces are in green. The pink areas indicate the administration that is distributed throughout the campus, and this is going to be your first level at Bell. And the second level, what you're seeing there is mostly the competition gym, the various seating areas. Your second level for the academic core spaces are the ones that would truly be the second floor. You've got the career and technology spaces as well as your core curriculum spaces in level 2. And then that morphs into science labs in level 3, and then the academic core spaces around the courtyard as well, over there on level 3 for this particular campus. A quick deep dive into all of the different spaces. So you've got your visual and performing arts right there, the auditorium space, and right behind there is the band. Again, just a quick note, we are working through a lot of these We do have a work session with both campuses and the fine arts and visual arts tomorrow morning for 2 hours. These are working sessions where we roll out plans and then rearrange a lot of these spaces. So these might look a little different the next month we are here, because this was based on the preliminary input we got before the holidays. You see the orchestra spaces, the choir, and the black box kind of right to the north of the band hall.
So I don't want to get too in the weeds, but
Yes.
what's that long, skinny space between orchestra and choir? Has a line in it right now.
Looks like a corridor. Looks like clothes hanging or something.
Oh, where it says uniform, is that? the-
It doesn't, well, to the right of that.
Oh, those are some of the instrument storage areas
Okay.
that you're seeing. And so the instrument storage information, much like the locker information, we've gotten all that from Josh and the different campuses and the different groups. So we start laying those out, and what you're not seeing is probably the tag, just for clarity purposes, but that is an instrument storage that opens into the orchestra. It's got 2 doors. You go in, get your instrument, and you come out.
Okay.
Again, just as I mentioned before, we are meeting with the groups tomorrow, so this might change after tomorrow's meeting. So the athletics spaces, we have met with the athletics department a couple of times with the principal, and then typically we try to meet with all of the departments together along with both campuses, just so there is some parity and there's discussion in case they want to lay out a particular space a certain way, just so it's a district standard. Again, these spaces are also morphing as we speak, but this is a preliminary layout right now. We've got the auxiliary gym, we've got a mat room on one side, the PE gym, the dance and the gymnastics gym, all close to each other. There are also shared locker spaces and restroom spaces. All of the locker counts, how many restrooms they need, all of that were based on the input we got. But then much like this phase in the project, we look at it, we lay it out, and sometimes they want to tweak it as we go. But that's the great thing about it, it's just a snapshot in time. Athletics, a lot of discussion. One of the resounding direction that we heard from both campuses is making sure there is a boys athletic corridor and a girls athletic corridor, and so we've been trying to make sure that we've been laying out the spaces in such a way that it is easy to monitor some of these spaces. You've got the weight room just to the south of the competition gym, and some of the boys sports. Some of the officials and the coaches area are right in the center. I think there was a discussion on a meeting room. Some of the athletic areas, we do have sort of a meeting area for all of the athletes. It's either incorporated in the locker room. If the locker room is large enough, I think there is one where we had to peel off and have a separate locker space. And then restrooms and locker types are being discussed right now. And then back to the academic core. These classroom pods pretty much lay out in a similar fashion, with classrooms around the periphery, so we can get some natural light in there, along with the core spaces, which is the restrooms, the electrical mechanical rooms, and a teacher area in the center. When we started looking at the campus character on the exterior, it's very similar to, we wanted to draw inspiration from the existing campus, in terms of the material palette. And so, again, I think this is very similar to what we've discussed in the past, but what we do have are some new renderings. And so this one is an updated view of Bell. As you approach, you see the entrance along with the after hours entries for the auditorium, as well as the competition gym further out. This is kind of zoomed out a little bit just to get all of those, that entire facade in. This one is as you're driving down Brown Trail, and this is looking at the academic core. You do see the bus loop. There's also the entrance to the SPED area. You've got all of the classrooms that stack over each other. We have an extended plaza at that entrance to allow students to have a gathering space as they wait for the bus or when they get dropped off by the bus. So this is another rendering as well. So what we've been doing is really working through and developing portions of the building as we move through. So our hope is to have these buildings are so large that you're never going to be able to perceive them in their entirety. And so we are moving through and showing you snapshots of the building as we have been developing them. Some of these renders were shared in the past, and so this is a closer look at the main entry.
So Geetha, couple back, the finish looks like a wood. What is that material?
It is actually a metal panel that looks that has a wood finish, and so there's quite a bit of variety, and it looks very authentic in terms of the wood grain and the color. It has all of the aesthetics of a wood panel with the maintenance of a metal panel, which Josh is going to like. And we've been using some of those materiality sparingly because just to give it some pops of color. It is predominantly a masonry. It's predominantly a brick building. We've got some patterns and some light and shade effects that I think this rendering, it's not showing up very well on the projection screen over here, but hopefully you can see it on the monitor. It's got some patterning within the same brick because we don't to give it some light and shade effect, but for the most part it is masonry. It's mostly masonry.
So looking at these drawings and the floor plans and layouts of the athletic facilities in particular, this may not be a question for you, but maybe for Dr. Harrington or for Mr. Fielder. What's kind of the design philosophy behind how the new building is going to tie into the existing IAC buildings and how those spaces are going to be integrated and who's going to use what, and are we not duplicating spaces and things like that?
We have gone through.
You have to be official.
Absolutely. We've gone through at length with the coordinators and then with the coaches to designate, to make sure each sport has their own space. So some will have what would become old space, which is the indoor still new to, it's relatively new to us, but that will be the old space, and some sports are out there and they'll remain out there. Some will be in the new space. Some will be making changes, and I don't have those lists right in front of me, but there's no duplicating of space. We're very specific on who's going where, and we're trying to make it relative to where their destination is. If it's the softball team, we want them to have the quickest path to the softball field, et cetera. So.
Yeah, I mean, I know those buildings are 10 years old now, but I remember all the work we went through and you guys went through to get the wrestling mats right and stuff like that. And then
Absolutely.
I see a separate wrestling room, so I'm like, well, are we going to redo all that, or is it
No.
Is it time to move all that, or?
Now talking to the principals, those could become multi-purpose rooms and even possibly classrooms. And I don't want to speak for a principal, but I know that that conversation has been had that with wrestling going out here, we repurposed the rooms in the existing indoor up on that second floor, that they could become classrooms. There's a team room right next to them, so it would just be an additional space. And Barry or Brock, do y'all have anything to add to that?
All right, thank you.
Mike, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Okay, it says training room, is that equipment? Is that where the trainer is gonna be?
That is a training space. It's where kids come to get taped, to get treatment.
So what if I get hurt in
we've asked for that to be changed to the middle of the top section over there. We've asked for that to be flipped and put that top section so it's in the middle where everybody can get to it.
That's what,
We don't wanna go.
that's one of the items we were talking about. It's still a work in progress. Next time you see this, it will look different.
Thanks, Mike.
We're wanting to gather every thought, every idea, so that when we put it to bed, that we've got the best layout we can.
And we've also, when we meet with the principals and it differs, sometimes they want a hard copy. Sometimes we definitely share a digital copy of the plans every time we meet with them. And that they also gather feedback from their various groups on the campus. So then we try to meet every month. And when we go back, sometimes they also let us know, hey, I've got too many comments, could you come by before our next meeting? So we go either collect the paper copy plans or take their digital markups and we incorporate them. These are going to go through a series of iterations, and I believe we turned these in earlier last week, right after the holidays, and the plans are still being updated as we speak. So if you have any comments, we'll be happy to note them and make sure that they get incorporated. Just just like I said, it is going through a lot of changes as we speak. So we are very excited about tomorrow as well, because we want to meet with both groups of folks from both campuses, along with the fine arts and visual arts folks from the departments, to see what we are going to have a working session for 2 hours at Josh's conference room, just so they can comment on each other's spaces as well, just for parity. And we've been doing that with the athletics for quite some time now, just because it's been a little bit more complicated puzzle to solve.
So Joe and team, I have 2 questions about this before we switch to Trinity. And you may say, Fred, we're going to go over this tomorrow, just like she said. 2 things that jump out at me is, and I don't know if this is a zoning issue or whatnot, but even when you started, the proposed band parking lot went from this big to this big. Why? Or, I mean, is that?
For Trinity?
No, I'm talking about Bell.
Bell, okay.
If we're talking slides, it was almost your first one.
Yes.
And I was just curious, is that a zoning issue, or did the band director say, hey, we want to make this smaller, or?
Actually, I think it had to do with how close to the curb cuts and the drives and parking, because
Okay.
the neck and some of the drive necks before you actually turn onto the city streets can be dictated. Now, I will tell you, there's also a light issue over there.
There's one other issue.
Okay.
We're still working through that, but we have to work through FEMA because that is in a floodplain, and it cuts right off that corner. So until we can get that discovered or solved, that's why they're representing it that way.
Okay,
But
fair enough.
the solution we're shooting for is for a complete field, 100 yards for the band to be able to practice on.
That's what we want. Okay. And then my second question, Joe, we had a slide and talked briefly about proposed classroom increase to 10 or 12, which I noticed that Bell is 10 or 12 classrooms smaller than Trinity's new design. Is that as a proposal? Do we need that? Should we be doing that? Is that option you're going to bring to us later, or are we doing this up now?
We just felt it was a question that was asked, and we thought it was something that we should at least account for. So the question was, if we ever did need space, are we prepared for where it will go? Now, guys, the demographer information is not showing us that we're ever going to need, our campuses should be large enough.
Okay, good.
We have a bubble going through right now and next year, so we could see a little growth, but the demographers who have been extremely accurate are not showing that we're going to grow at all at the high schools beyond this year and next year.
Okay.
All that to say also, our overall capacity in those buildings is enough to handle some increases. Buinger has the capacity to take on additional also. So we do feel very comfortable that we have the capacity. All that to say, I still think it is a good idea for us to say, if we did need those rooms, where could we put them? We really don't think we'll need them. If we really thought we were going to need them, we would have included them.
And that's my question, okay.
Also, just to add to that too, that is not an uncommon practice for us. So at the CTE, we have a spot that was targeted. If we ever had to plug in, we could pick up about another 10 to 12 classes. And then when Dr. Joe, we were looking at the demographer's numbers, we were looking at Viridian. And so on all those schools, we knew how we could add on to those as well.
We have flipped quite a few slides. I apologize. I don't know if I should do it while they were talking and be distracting. So some of these renderings we've presented to the board before. We really like them, so we keep them in the presentation. Thank you. And so these show some of the multi-purpose areas within the campus. The competition gym that is branded for Bell, and the performance space as well. And so that rounds out Bell. I'll pause for a second just so we don't have to back up 20 slides in case you have questions on Bell before I jump into Trinity.
I've got some Bell questions.
Okay.
Can you go to slide 17?
Okay.
And before we jump into that, just as an overall question for you, the last time we saw this was in October 30th.
Yeah.
Do you have a list of changes that have been made since October 30th to now? I mean, some of them jump out at you, some are more subtle.
Correct.
Is there a list that we can see?
We do not have a list because there's quite a few. I mean, all of the parts and pieces in the building have been literally like thrown apart and like put back together. I will tell you there has been quite a lot of discussion in the athletics area in terms of, because I think the gyms themselves stayed. When we had shown the board these areas, we basically showed blocks that said locker rooms, locker rooms, locker rooms. I do know the administration has gone through a lot of changes because the layout of the rooms, because now we are looking at adjacency to see how the rooms relate to each other, who needs to be next to whom, what is really the sequence and the logistics of the everyday, work in the campus. Typically, we don't keep a list of changes because there's been quite a few, because what we had was schematic design and we are working through those. So I can tell you for a fact that the athletics area has changed a lot. The SPED spaces changed a lot too, because we had some discussions with the special education coordinators just in preparation for phase 0. So we've rearranged all of those rooms. The blocks remain the same, but the rooms themselves shifted. And I know the administration area for both campuses are on version 6 or 7. We're getting closer and closer, but not. So I apologize. We typically can't keep a list just because there's just so many changes happening at this point.
Well, here's what I would ask, especially if you're going to be coming monthly now, and the list of changes are going to continue to narrow and get smaller. If you'd be able to highlight or give us a list, not of all of the changes, but of the substantive changes,
Okay.
some of the larger ones. I mean, to Fred's point, the fact that the band parking lot got smaller, without that being pointed out, some of us might not have picked up on that. But I think that's a good point. We don't want to make a parking lot that's not big enough for our band.
Right.
So if there are some of the larger items, larger ticket items that changes are made to, would it be possible for you to make a list or highlight them as you come monthly to us?
Yes,
especially as we're finalizing the design at this point.
Yes, absolutely. And quite honestly, I think from this point out, I think it might be a little bit more easier because now we've hopefully got nominally most of it correct, and so the changes would get fewer and fewer, and so we'll definitely, because I think if we had to do it at this point, I would have had to have bubbled like every single spot, because almost all of them
Sure.
changed.
But now that we're at this point, I think
Correct,
it makes
yes.
more sense.
Fair point, we can do it.
So one of the things that I'm looking at as I look at the designs for both Bell and Trinity is that there are some items on this particular slide that show up in Bell that don't show up in Trinity.
Correct.
And I want to make sure that if there's a specific need that a campus has that the other campus doesn't have, that they get what they want, but that there are not amenities that would be necessary, that would be wished for on one of the two campuses that only go to one campus over the other. How are you approaching that?
So we are approaching that by really meeting with coordinators and department heads together. The only meeting that we have separately are the meetings with the principals. So the principal meetings, just for time efficiencies of both their busy schedules, we meet with the Bell principals separately. Like this week, we are meeting with Bell on Thursday afternoon, and then on Friday with Michael for Trinity. So those are the only meetings, but in terms of like the fine arts meeting tomorrow, both campuses will be there, and there'll be representatives from both campuses. Athletics has been the same as well. Like we meet together, and then if there are changes, then we need to highlight and bring that to, and we typically meet over at Josh's conference room, so he's aware, so he can bring back to Dr. Harrington and to the board any changes that are different in terms of the two campuses.
And there's two items here that jump out to me that are not on Trinity.
Okay.
And I do have questions about what they are.
Okay,
There's one room called golf practice.
okay.
What is the intention for that room at Bell?
So I know that some of the golf areas were changed in Trinity, and now we've got like golf storage spaces on the third level at the competition gym for both campuses. I know that we took that away from Trinity because of who's teaching golf. Do you want to speak to that?
Well, there's golf storage.
Yes.
But I'm talking about the one that's not labeled golf storage, the one that's labeled golf practice.
Right by the training room.
What is that? Yeah.
It's just a additional storage area. Is that what you're looking at on this particular?
You've got two golf storages
I see it.
labeled up at the top center.
So I think he's
The one on the bottom left is labeled golf practice. Is that different than golf storage?
I don't know what, unless we have a simulator in there, what we would do with that room for golf practice. I don't remember that being identified as golf practice. I do know that we've talked about having a golf area on the third floor, that there's some space up there, third floor of the, surrounding the arena. And there's space, the identical space at both campuses that we've talked about using for golf that's a little more wide open, that we can probably do something with, hang some nets, hopefully have a simulator, maybe some putting. Barry could probably have a lot of great ideas being the golf coach. But when it's all said and done, both schools will have the same access to the same type of facilities. If Bell has golf practice room, Trinity will have a golf practice room, and vice versa.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's the thing. These are not final, so this must have gotten onto the Bell, but not Trinity. Trinity might have something else. But that is, when they come to us in final version, we're going to have to make, we've got to have the same things. We also can't, we have to be
Unless
very.
they don't need the same things.
Well, it depends if they're running different programs. I don't want to be identical, but I also, the reality is we can't make huge investments on the individual wants of the moment. We have to build the program and the facilities that will take us years into the future. These buildings, we've said before, our buildings gave us 50 years and I need 50 more, and we can't be spending money remodeling all the time. We've got to make great decisions, put the facilities in, and great flexible spaces are what we need, so they can accommodate what everyone needs. But I can't start building things that are very unique to an individual, and then when that individual changes, now we have to remodel or change, and it's costing us money. We've got to have the flexibility to do things, and I understand practice changes and training procedures change, and we'll have to keep up to date with that. But we've got to make sure both of our campuses have the space to do what they need to do.
And I don't want to interrupt your questions, Chris, but just for the sake of the next time we look at this, I'm not sure what's the second floor, what's the third floor in these areas.
Okay,
It doesn't indicate that.
okay, we can do.
And I don't see a third floor of this athletic area on here. I see 2 floors. So if there is a third floor that only just has a catwalk or something, I think that would be helpful for us to see that here.
Okay, we can do that, absolutely.
There was an image with that
Yeah, I was going to.
somewhere.
So this one, so that was just a zoomed in portion of that level that has most of the spaces, but if you look, this on the level 3, where you've got most of the competitions, gym area grayed out, you've got the colors in pink and orange. Those are, so to your point, it's really just a corridor with those amenities to get
And
on.
it doesn't say level 3, so that's the key we need next time.
Okay, okay. So on those, Julie, like, we do have the names of it on the side as well, like on the side
Oh.
slide, but didn't. Sorry.
My mistake, I didn't see it.
Okay, okay. Well, but
Now I know.
the snapshots we have are just basically focusing on the areas that actually have most of the programs.
You didn't see it either? Okay.
Okay, sorry, it's like the architect brain. It's also got a black border, so it's hard to see. Okay. Did you had more? Yeah.
It's
Did
there.
you have?
My mistake.
Oh, no, you're good. Did you have more questions?
Yeah.
as well?
Why don't you go ahead and keep going through Trinity, and then I'll ask some overall questions.
Okay. I do have quite a few slides, so I apologize for everyone that's behind me. Trinity High School, again, just wanted a quick comparison. Some of these numbers have or might have updated just a little bit in terms of square footages and things like that. 97 core classrooms, 21 science labs and classrooms, 65,000 square feet of VPA, 3 gyms, dedicated dance space, dedicated gymnastics gym space, and the dining area has also been increased. This again looks at the Trinity concept for the site. Again, we are starting to show some parent loop areas, student loop areas. The overall concept over here is to keep the student drivers away from the buses and on the parents, and so we work really hard, even on tight sites. Some of them are newer drivers. So this is from October 23. And then this one does show some changes based on some current developments on the site. But we are also talking with the campus. We've talked with the athletics department to make sure that we have the fields and so on and so forth that we need. Again, talking to the city and the traffic folks as well. I think there was a question on the interim parking counts when some of the phases are going on. It is a great question. Right now, we do have a planning session with Joris and Josh and his team tomorrow for 2 hours. We are going through some of the parking counts that would happen. I do have all of the parking counts that would be proposed versus existing. The caveat to it is, as you know, sometimes when you drive through these campuses, some of the parking lots are completely empty based on the time of day, the day of the week. So that's what we're working through. So the short answer to that question is we don't have it as yet, but we will pretty soon. We're working very closely with the campus principals as well.
Where did the tennis courts go? I can't find them.
Yeah, that is
We're working on some options. We're working on some options on the tennis courts, but those have not been finalized. There will be tennis courts.
I figured Dr. Harrington probably gave you an update, so which is why I sort of glossed over that one.
I just thought maybe wasn't seeing them, so. Okay.
More to come, right, Dr. Harrington?
There will be tennis courts.
They'll be on the roof of the competition gym.
In Trinity, we've got a few more phases, as y'all are well aware. Starting with the phase 1, which is going to be the athletics area, and then we'll do the leapfrog effect on that. The gray shapes that you see are the existing buildings that we are working very closely with Joris as well as the campus to make sure that when we bring a new phase online and we take down an existing building, we are not disrupting the campus function.
So the only thing that's missing from both of these, well, not the only thing, but one of the things that's missing from both of these is the temporary classrooms, what do you call those things? Portables. I hate those things. Right now, they're in the phase 1 area, so, but they're not shown there. And so I think for the future, it'd be good for us to see where are those going.
Okay.
The ones that are going to remain in use, the ones that are not going to remain in use, I don't guess I care about, but where are they going to go?
Okay. And those are, yes, we can get them incorporated. We are actually working through some of those right now. When construction is complete, they'll completely go away, which we are all very excited about. But the interim, the phase 0 is actually quite a unique challenge, because what we're trying to also figure out is we want to put these in locations where they don't get disrupted, where the students have to only move once. And then there's a minor, detail of all of the construction traffic and construction material and so on and so forth. So I think our goal is to have an update presentation probably next month to show you a snapshot of each phase. Yes, yes. We know you're very familiar with the campus. Again, looking at the proposed future addition that we talked about, much like Bell, it would be a 12 classroom, 4 classrooms, 3-level kind of a proposed solution. And the yellow area that you see over there is what we are suggesting right now for future, if at all you need. And then Trinity, again, as you know, has got quite a bit of topography. I know we've talked about it a lot. This is level 0 that we've indicated on the right-hand side over there. And I apologize, I didn't pick up on the fact that nobody noticed that. But level 0 shows some of the visual and performing arts. And when you start looking at the renderings, they start making more sense why they are level 0. And then level 1 is predominantly where we will connect to the finished floor of the indoor athletic. Sorry. And then in this particular campus, all of the athletics are onto one side. Again, working through all of those little rooms that we are still moving and shifting. We have started, we actually also will start making a note of all of the differences between the 2 campuses, if it was requested and agreed upon in the meetings, just so a year from now we can all remember why those are different. Then you've got the core classrooms, and then the core areas right in the center with the visual and performing arts all the way to the plan left. Level 2 over here, you'll notice that all of your large volumes are indicated in gray, and then it's really your classroom block that sort of starts stacking. Again, the level 3 will just basically be only the classrooms, and then level 4 is truly only the science lab areas. It is going to be roof on that little bit over there that used to have classrooms just to the left of the science lab areas. Looking a little bit closer at these, again, please don't hold us to this. This is this will be updated as of tomorrow, but it's generally set up where you can have events in the large auditorium space or the black box, still have access to restrooms and still close off the rest of the campus. That's the setup for both campuses. There are doors. So that way you can have access into all of the different areas after hours without having people traverse through the entire building. But over here you've got an orchestra area, band and choir that also open up to some service drives so they can load and unload as needed. Athletics, this area is still being updated as we talked about. You've got the competition gym with all of the different locker rooms surrounding it, along with the gym lobby, and then the PE and the auxiliary and the gymnastics gym, along with the dance gym, sort of form center, and then you've got the weight room to the right of that as well. The classroom pods, again, this arrangement is pretty similar on the various levels. So you've got the department office, which is actually a teacher staff area with the classrooms and some restrooms. So those are the plans for Trinity. Again, in terms of the changes, all of the athletic area has changed multiple times. The administration layout has changed multiple times, as well as the visual and performing arts area has changed multiple times as well on this particular campus. Again, we've made sure that the new campus has landscape as one of the prominent design features, and the strong connection to outdoors as well. Some of these slides we've presented before. The color palette is a little bit different for Trinity, but the materiality is the same in the sense that it's masonry, brick, and then you've got dark glass, dark frames over here, and the wood is a little bit darker. This is a new view. It is the one from industrial. So you're turning back to kind of look at the entry piece that's marked with that big canopy over there. You're also seeing your auditorium entry which is why it's level 0, because it's almost level. And so you're driving down industrial and sort of shouldn't be turning back for that long, but you can look at the building. We just had to step far. Again, the scale of these buildings is so large that you've got to step back. Maybe you're in one of the shopping centers across the street. This one's a new rendering as well. This is looking at the proposed east courtyard. So you've got the artificial turf in the center, which is why it's really green. So Josh doesn't have to stress about that all year round. And then you do have some real landscaping along the sides to soften that edge as well.
Yeah, this one was really helpful to me because we had that long conversation the last time you were here about what this would look like. And I really envisioned something that was more narrow, and this helped me a lot.
Okay, wonderful. And again, in terms of the materiality and the detailing, the IAC is on the right side of this image, if you will, and so you've got that overhang connection. Again, I think it's a little bit clearer on the computer screen, not so much on the projector over there, but you could see the canopy that connects the IAC with the athletics area, along with all of the classrooms. And then you see the stair connection in the center in the dark, in the glass connection. So this one is one of those views that you've already seen before. Not a lot has changed in terms of the layouts. You will see that we are refining some of the materiality, so some of the color differences are we are really looking at the exterior material and tweaking it. We will be bringing some exterior materials for everyone to touch and feel, along with some interior finishes a little later on. Again, the entry into Trinity. This is one of the renderings we had presented in the past. And then this is looking at the competition gym area as well. And then this is the theater auditorium entry. Again, we're working through some of the topography and the landscaping elements just so it can work and function long term. The cafeteria multi-use space, again, just you've seen this before. The Trinity Arena that is branded for Trinity. This is pretty much identical to Bell in terms of the shaping and the layout. And then the theater is designed differently. Okay, I'm gonna pause and then I'll go through. I just have a couple more slides for those in the audience. I'm sorry.
Don't worry, they're all very interested in this.
Okay, I'm just like, sorry, I'm the first one to go and just like droning on and on. Just wanted to provide a snapshot on our next steps. So right now, we are in the December-January timeframe. We are working fast and furiously on the phase 0, which is really critical right now. These are enabling projects, if you will, that for Trinity, it is really looking at a modular building for the SPED area so that that existing building can be taken down and those students don't have to be in the center of all that construction. And over at Bell, we are looking at locating some athletic amenities and so on and so forth, just so Joris can get ready when the documents are issued later in the year to hit the ground running for phase 0. We do have another 2-hour working session with the CMAR, Joris, and Josh tomorrow at their office to hammer out some details. We are looking at existing utilities. We are looking at moving some of the portables that we talked about. The tennis court relocation right now is going to be just for Bell because of the other alternative solution that is being worked on for Trinity. So we will hammer those details out and we will have an update for the board in February. And so that's what we are working on right now. We will be presenting our design development presentation in February as well. Then we'll move into the construction document phase of the project for both projects. We are talking with Joris. It sounds like we might have to issue both the drawing sets a little staggered just so there's enough coverage and enough interest. But we are looking at it at construction document issue in the September-October timeframe with construction costs towards the end of the year. These are still bar charts right now because we are hammering out the details as we go. Right now, phase 0 is the only one that we've got an absolute date of January the 16th to be issued to them.
So the way I look at this, nothing is happening this summer as far as movement at the campuses, unless some of that is phase 0 that you haven't outlined for us yet.
Exactly. So
Okay.
phase 0, we didn't show it in the steps because that's in motion right now. And there's probably a lot of questions that will be coming with that. One would be, we did talk about the portables will be relocated and then doing the SPED area at Trinity, but also relocating portables at Bell as well. But Bell has a tight campus because we're basically going to be building right in their main parking lot. So we're having to also look at places that we can carve out additional parking for students during the day and staff to make sure we can cover all that. And that'll be part of that.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
I think so. That's kind of all that we had for both campuses.
All right, questions?
So you met with SPED twice over the last 2 months. You said you made some design decisions. Can you share with us what those are?
So most of the design decisions we were discussing with their department was for the modular building, which is really the interim solution for Trinity. But it was very helpful because it helped us kind of modify and refine the proposed different areas for the proposed design for the final relocation as well. But right now, we've got a pretty efficient layout for the modular building for them to function in the interim. So that's what we were concentrating on for Phase 0.
We also did some changes in, especially at Trinity, the locality. The nurse at Trinity's got to be super fit, because where her office is and when she's got to get to the W building and she's got to get there quick, you're talking she's got to hoof it across to be able to help out with some things. So now with some changes, that was one of the big ones we saw as an opportunity to better position SPED with where the location of the nurse, so they have a much closer locality and she can get there quicker.
And sorry, I'm going to do this like really, really quick, but I can. So all of the purple areas, and I think my hand is showing up. So that's all of the SPED areas. We pretty much changed the layout of it in such a way that they've got an internal corridor with doors at the ends that helps them, that works better for them. And then the nurse right now is also in a position where she can get to where she needs to be.
Okay.
And then, because of the way these doors are, we just needed to make sure that there was one SPED program that was accessible by more students, so we cleaved that off to across the street, if you will, because they're not part of the secure corridor setup. So all of those changes were made after we met with them.
Great, great. And we've been working on this design a long time. You've been working on this design a long time. And I don't want to get ahead of ourselves from our next presentation, but our next presentation changes the way we're doing things for, if everything goes as planned, changes the way we're doing things as far as athletics and visual and performing arts. We're having more kids on campus. Does the design that's currently constituted in these design plans fit with what we're trying to do with our ninth graders in the next presentation? They go hand in hand. I don't want to jump in front of it, but
Yes.
Are we comfortable that these plans are going to fit our plans for visual and performing arts and athletics?
Yes, they've basically asked for locker counts for these future buildings, and we've tried to do our very best to estimate how many lockers we need per sport, and that includes what you're alluding to, freshmen at the high school for athletics and for fine arts, of course, and the answer is yes to that.
Okay. Okay. The turf field at Trinity, it caused some consternation the last time we saw this. Mike, you weren't here. But from October to now, the field's no longer striped, but it is there. Can you sell us on why this is a good idea to have the field in that location, have it turfed, but it not be striped?
Striping is pretty simple. We have, like at Pennington Field, we have our football lines are sewn into the field or glued into the field. Our soccer lines are not. So when we play soccer, like right now, if you went over to Pennington Field, you would see soccer lines because they're painted with like a chalk type paint that's temporary. And that's what we could do with that. We could make that into a football field, a soccer field. We could have just, if it's the spring and we didn't need lines for anything, we wouldn't have to have lines. But I think the thought for that field is to be a multi-purpose, not necessarily just for football or just for any other organization. It's for all the kids, and consequently we don't need to have permanent lines on it, permanent football lines, but we can always put temporary lines, with that chalk paint that we do now.
I'll tell you one other thing too, if I could point out. Also, if you look at the SPED area, the one thing that we like about that too is that gives an overflow for that. It also gives us a space for PE to be able to step outside and to be able to work there as well.
Okay. Can you go to slide, let's see. Can you go to slide 7?
Don't look. if it makes you busy.
And this goes a little bit to what Julie was talking about. I'd like to make a request that we add to this chart the number of classrooms and parking spaces and areas and practice fields, not just currently and at the end of all of this, but throughout the phases. So if there's an issue with parking or an issue with practice fields or an issue with classrooms, it's not a surprise to us. Just kind of highlight where we may be seeing some issues as we go through the process, not just from the beginning to the end.
Okay, we'll do.
I think that'd be helpful to us.
Okay, we can do that.
Mm-hmm. Somebody else go.
All right, so I have one question. Obviously, I was a band parent. So we discussed briefly the band practice field over in Bell. And when I look at the one on Trinity, it's got bus routes and parent routes right through it. Is that going to be a problem?
So that one is located, we did have a lot of discussion on that particular location. And then we've discussed it with the campus. We'll definitely bring it up tomorrow as well. We believe that the bus traffic and then the other orangish or the pink color that you see is actually the special ed pickup area. We think that's going to be a snapshot in time during the day, but our discussions was that that they'd be able to make it work, but we could definitely double check with them. But as you can tell, this site is a little bit larger, but it still has a lot of restrictions as well. Because when you get to where the baseball area and the softball fields are, it gets pretty tight around there. But we'll definitely bring it up tomorrow and make sure.
Could you go to slide 44, please?
Yes.
Okay, I'd like to know, are those windows baseball and football proof? And soccer?
They're not any different from the rest of the building. They are.
Because we got written up to be one of the best skateboarding places in Texas, and we had to put in, Josh, you know how many windows all the time for skateboarders? When I was there, it was a bunch of windows. Well, I'm just thinking, if I was 12 years old, I'd be up here every day on this field. And with it comes a baseball, football, soccer, whatever.
So all the first floor windows are going to be the ballistic glass, right? But then everything above that's regular glass.
Yeah. So only singles, no home runs. Okay, that's my question, because the kids are going to be up there. I mean, I would be.
Well, and on 44, is that the mall or is that the turf field?
Turf.
That's the turf field.
Okay.
Oh, that'd be a great place. Better than a street light.
It is. It's not very clear in this image, but we do have a lot of these areas secure, so you don't have, because there's been a lot of discussions, and that again is another ongoing design update. There is definitely going to be wrought iron fencing and landscaping and other landscape elements that would prevent someone to just like get into this field. But that being said, it doesn't preclude somebody from getting access.
If you enclose the walkway, then no one can get on it other than students who go to school. I've seen that even the new school like Tyler. Yeah. Well, they have glass.
Yes.
You can't get on the weekends.
Yeah.
It'd be a great idea.
So when you were talking about LD Bell, I don't know if you mentioned it on Trinity, when you talked about the palette and the brick color wanting to reflect what's currently there. Was that something that was requested a lot? Did anybody? I don't think that Bell's brick is particularly pretty or
It's not much to look at.
yeah, it's not something that I was like, we need to save this.
Well, we do respect the context and the history and the sentimentality when we work on existing campuses. I will tell you though, that was used as a springboard. It's not an exact match. It would pay homage to what used to be, but we will bring, there's quite a bit of brick around both buildings, so we will be able to bring the exact samples and have the board look at it as well. But
Okay.
typically, as architects, we do like to respect the context and just the sentimentality that goes.
Yeah, but there's nothing else around there that's that color, that brick. So once it gets torn down,
Nobody will remember.
yeah, the context is gone.
Well, we've got your vote on picking another color.
I'd rather it look as nice as possible instead of try to maintain a tradition of brick color or something. More questions?
Just a few. Okay. Can you go to slide 34? Okay, so if you, and scroll with me, because I'm looking at the core classrooms, the light, yeah, right there, the light green color. So so that's level 1.
Yes.
And so stacked on top of that in level 2 are classrooms right on top of it.
Yes.
Okay. And then you go to level 3 and you've got classrooms stacked right on top of that, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And then I'm holding my cursor on
Right.
it as well.
So when you get to level 4, if we're going to be looking at additional classrooms in the future, not the ones that are planned.
Correct.
I know that's not the recommendation, but why would the additional classrooms not go on top of the existing classrooms instead of on top of our turfed field?
We could, but that would mean that the structure has to accommodate a future addition that may or may not happen, and it is also going to lay out this, change the layout of this floor as well. But it absolutely can be done. But because it is a scenario that may happen, in the way future, I think just having it be accommodated along the turf field area was just a less intrusive, less resource solution.
And you'd have to
Is the
plan for
structure as intended, or as it will be constructed, is it conducive to building on top of it? Or we would have to
plan
change
for it.
something else?
Well, I think the easy answer is we'd have to plan for it, and so it would have to accommodate a future addition, whether it happens or not. You can't, it's.
Yeah, and you'd have to look at regress and
Also,
stairs
all of
and
our
that
mechanical
stuff.
is sitting on top of that.
That's the other.
So mechanical
There you-
supporting
there's the
3
answer.
floors down,
there's the answer.
so it'd be all of that plus the chase. And so you'd have to remove all that before you could go up and then put it back together.
And usually, if it is not an imminent addition, it's just easier to just accommodate it elsewhere.
Is there anywhere else on this campus that you would see a potential future addition other than building on top of the turf field?
We could certainly explore that. Again, because these did not have a lot of room, and because of the face construction, we can certainly explore that and see if there's another option as well.
I don't know where we're going to get there. We may very well not. But if we have in some file somewhere down the line that we're planning on building on top of the turf field, I'd like for us to at least explore other options before that's our future option.
Okay, we could certainly look at that.
All right, did any other board members have any more questions? All right, thank you. Thanks, Sangeeta.
Thank you. I think I've bumped myself to the end of the agenda for next time. Appreciate your time.
You'll be the one
Yeah,
that has to wait.
You're building all of their future homes, so they're interested, trust me.
Well,
All
so
right, 6.03, ninth grade VPA and athletics report. Dr. Johnson.
super excited to be here, and more importantly, super excited to celebrate our team who's waited so long for the last presentation. So thank you all so much for staying. They give hours of dedication of time to our kids and our programs, and so excited to bring this forward through feedback from them. And really, they're the dream team that's going to make it work. So excited to bring you this ninth grade VPA athletics plan for 24-25. So let's talk about a little bit of stakeholder groups. So we've got high school principals, junior high principals, coordinators, head coaches, assistant coaches at both junior high and high school levels, and VPA. We've got our drill team, our band directors, our cheer directors, and then we also, once we were able to get these groups together and figure out where we were as far as viability of a plan and whether we were going to be secure in our future, we decided to take it to the parents to get feedback before bringing this to you. So, so let's talk a little bit about the plan, like how we got here. So last January, I came to you and I talked about, I gave a presentation about UIL not approving our plan, and we were going to put a plan in place that allowed kids to play at their ability level. Well, we've since gone back and we've continued to kind of push on UIL and asked them to reconsider, and we approached it from a different way. The way we approached it this time was through Goal 2, effective and efficient operations. Not knowing what the future holds for us, we wanted to ask, do we have the ability to move resources from our junior high campus if we need to our high school campus if we need to, or not move them at all? And so we made a request with UIL, and they responded back to us, and they gave us approval. Athletics. And so then we kind of thought about that, and we talked and said, okay, well, what does that look like now? How do we do this in the most effective way? And so we began to have conversations with our coaches, stakeholders, and then during that time, we knew that the counselors were going to have to work their magic on scheduling, so we got them involved, and then we got VPA involved, and said, okay, well, this is we now are at a point where we have viability of an athletic plan. Now, how does this work for VPA? Is this something that we're even interested in pursuing and talking about? So we started to kick that around and came up with a VPA plan. So once we developed that plan in October, at the end of October, we worked in the month of November and finalizing that draft plan that we were getting ready to take out to the community for stakeholder feedback. And then now we're here for the board report. And so one of the things I just want to call out with these community stakeholder feedbacks, we had so many parents fill up both Trinity and the Bell Auditorium, a little bit different than our bond presentations at those places. We had 200 to 350 people, and we stayed there until every parent was addressed and every question was answered, and we're going to be putting out that FAQ a little bit later this week. So got glowing feedback and parent excitement, and so we're really excited about the plan. So overview, one of the things we talked about was there's a lot of moving parts, how do we simplify it? What are we currently doing, and what is the major change? So basically what we're doing is we have 4 remaining sports that are currently at the junior high campus that we would be moving to the high school campus. So all of our other sports, and I'll talk about that on another slide, all of our other sports are currently operating with 9th graders at the high school campus. So let's look at the change. And when we look at the number of kids that are already up there, and we look at the number of sports that would be coming, it really comes down to just 4 sports would be moving up. And when we look for VPA, actually cheer should be, and cheer's under athletics. And we would be moving cheer, if we're gonna move 9th grade athletes up, they gotta have somebody that cheers for them. So one of the things we would be adding is actually moving the 9th graders up and providing an opportunity for our 6th grade, incoming 7th graders would have the opportunity to try out. And so we would gain incoming 7th grade cheerleaders. So drill team would pilot a program to offer dance for 9th grade kids at Trinity and Bell, and then marching band and color guard would do the same. So to start with visual and performing arts, all of our current performing arts programs are provided at the junior high level, with the exception of marching band, color guard, drill team, and dance. So these programs currently would qualify as a PE credit, so that kids could still participate and be involved in those fine arts programs at the junior high.
And so, for instance, as we think about a marching band student, marching band, the schedule would look like this. So 0 hour first period in the morning, the student would be over here at the stadium or in the Raider Bowl for marching band, and then they would be transported back to their junior high campus for second period. And so because of the way things are scheduled, it would still, depending on their course load, it would still provide them the opportunity to be part of the junior high ensemble as well, because that's a different season. So students would begin practice the last week of July, and they would get their PE credit for marching band for the trimester. It's important to know that this would be pilot only. So we wouldn't be moving ninth graders up in marching band to push props around. They would have to be sound enough musicians and marchers to be able to truly contribute to the marching band. And so these would be some of your top musicians that would be able to do both, because as Christine has taught me, you might be able to play, but when you start moving around, it's a lot different. And so I've learned that. So these kids that would do this, they would go through an audition with the band directors, and then they would be offered this opportunity. And one of the things that Stacy Forrest and her team of counselors, they've said, we believe we have the ability to make a lot of schedules work with these kids because it's a pilot. That pilot is going to teach us what expansion could look like in future years. So that's what would happen with marching band and color guard. The key on this would be that parents would have to transport their students in order to provide transportation to get them there. And then once they get their kid to the practice location, then we will get them back to their class. And then they will go on to their second period. There'll be a marching band parent meeting for both Bell and Trinity that would happen a little bit later this semester. So for drill team, students would have to qualify to make the drill team in order to participate, and they would begin practice in late July as well, and they would be following the same practice schedule of returning to junior high for the second period and getting that PE credit for drill team. Drill team tryouts are upon us, February 15th, and so students that would be selected for this opportunity would be very unique. And what's interesting is there's possibly kids that are sitting in ninth grade that never have had this opportunity, but are phenomenal dancers that now have this chance. So when you think about all of this, think about it for VPA, just like athletics, we're expanding the opportunities for kids to perform and compete at the level that they're capable of performing and competing at. So parents and guardians would have to drop off their students to rehearsals at 6:45 a.m., and students would bus back. And then there's a Bell, a mirrored meeting that's on February 5th and 6th already scheduled for drill team. So then we get to athletics. And so at the top, when you think about what's happened for the last 25 years, as far back as Mike Fielder could go, these are the sports that have been participating at the high school. And so the sports at the bottom, football, volleyball, boys and girls basketball, girls soccer, and cheerleading, they have not been participating at the high school, and that's what the focus on the change would be. So ninth grade athletics will be held last period after school for high school campuses. The reason for the last period and beginning of the day is so that we can avoid as many conflicts as possible, so that we can have students. At some point, they're going to have to make a decision. The more things they're involved in, the more singleton classes, and the schedules get pretty tight. But we're trying to push that out as far as we can by making sure that we schedule VPA in the morning and athletics in the afternoon. And so we will be bringing a coaching staffing plan to move 2 junior high coaches to high school as freshman coaches. And so 2 would come from each junior high with central splitting. And those coaches would move to become freshman coaches only, and they wouldn't go back and forth. And that will provide consistency for our coaching trees. Transportation would shuttle the way they currently do. And so we would just accommodate more buses for the additional kids that are coming over. And students who are bus eligible will be able to take the bus home from the junior high. So for cheer, freshman cheer will be held last period of the day along with athletics, and so cheer will take up a PE credit in the student schedule. One of the pieces of feedback that we got from our community meetings was, could we do freshmen in the morning and do freshmen in the afternoon? And the problem that presents is the fact that students can't be involved in two PE periods or athletics periods during the day, and so by putting them in a 0 hour and then putting them at the end of the day, that would cause a conflict. So this is something that we remain to try to find ways to work around, but freshman cheer will be at the end of the day, so that we can avoid as few as conflicts. They'll ride the same shuttle that the athletes will ride, and we'll accommodate for that. Freshman cheer tryouts will be on February 16th. And then the shuttle and transportation will happen the same. And then you see our parent meetings will happen on the 7th and the 8th of February at Trinity. And so for course requests, this is a little different. Junior high, and this was a little bit of a shell shock for our parents, because what we did was we invited all parents that were going to be affected in the future, and so some of them got some counseling and course selection information for the first time ever, and so they had a lot of scheduling questions. And so when you're in junior high, you can select athletics, but when you're in high school, you actually have to belong to a sport. And so we talk about that's going to look different in your course selections. And if you've already selected your courses, it's no big deal. We've got a way, and we've got a way to figure it out to make sure that those things can be changed as we move forward. And so, kids that believe that they want to try out for marching band, they will select a band. And so they will go through the tryout process and whatnot, and then if they are able to be invited as part of the pilot program, then their course requests would reflect that. And so another example, wanted to provide you and them examples of what it could look like. So for before school sport and marching, here's an example. You've got students would have first period athletics in the fall try, first period swim in the second try, and then they would go throughout their regular day as soon as they come into second period. And then here's an example for an end of the day after school. They would start their day at the junior high campus, and then they would be bused to, in this case, girls soccer at the end of the day. And so lastly, again, the turnout and the communication with the community was absolutely amazing. And so I think it just goes to show every month we report to you on attendance. And this is a major reason why attendance remains high. Our teachers, our staff, engaging people. And so since they're here, I just want to take the opportunity and celebrate them a little bit more. But we had great turnout for parent meetings. We got the word out, and we got great feedback. And so excited to present this information.
Well, we quote Mr. Cargile all the time and say that he always says that kids don't come to school for algebra. They come for soccer and choir. Same with parents. They don't come to school for algebra. They come to school for soccer and choir.
Yeah, I know Mr. Cyrier always liked to count the number of kids in the drill team. That's
Yes,
how you knew how healthy a school was, by how many kids they had in their drill team.
Brandon, I have a couple questions. Is there going to be an A and B team on these ninth grade?
Yes, and at this point, I'd like to invite the team up to talk. But the answer is yes, and the key is this plan does not exclude kids participating. As many kids that want to participate.
So there's no limit.
We'll continue to have those teams, especially. But we did say something, and I'm going to let Mike step up. We did tell parents, football is a no-cut sport, but we do have cut sports, and that does have an impact. So that doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to create more teams when we do have cut sports, so I'm going to step back.
I'll give an example of basketball, high school basketball. You've got a varsity, a JV1, a JV2, a freshman, a freshman 2. Football, same thing. So you've got 5 teams at that high school potentially, and we're going to take all comers on those no-cut sports. Some sports are cut sports, and it just they are when they're in 9th grade at the junior high, and they will be when they're at 9th grade at the high school. But we're going to provide plenty of opportunity. We're not going to be turning away kids because we're restricting the number of teams. If kids just don't have the skill level to make the team, then they're not going to make the team. But they wouldn't have made the 9th grade team. But kids that are going to make the team, we're going to have a place for them. And kids that don't make the team, we're going to help them find their home. We want these kids, we know, everyone in this room knows, kids need to be in athletics, they need to be in fine arts, they need to be engaged in our programs, and that's these folks sitting out here, that's their goal, that's our goal, that's your goal, to make sure these kids find their home and are around our coaches and our directors that can mentor those kids.
Who's going to coach the cheerleaders? Are you going to take the cheerleader from junior high and then hire another cheerleader, one for the junior high?
We have two stipends for each junior high, and they're the same stipend. They're kind of co-coaches, and the plan is for us to take. So we've got 2.5 schools, 2.5 junior highs on the east side, 2.5 on the west side, right? So we're going to take one cheerleading coach from the east side and one from the west side. That coach will go up the last period of the day with those cheerleaders and be their freshman cheerleading coach.
Okay, what if a 9th grader makes varsity? Is all 9th grade athletics 7th period?
Yes, sir.
And if they make varsity, then they come first period?
At this time, we plan for cheerleaders to be on for freshman cheerleaders to be on the freshman cheer team because of that reason.
Well, how about football and basketball?
It is possible for those kids to play varsity just like they can now. But let me touch on the cheer. Cheerleading is first period at the high schools, and that's closer to second period for the junior highs, for matching up schedules, and it doesn't match up. In addition to that, pep rallies are during the school day. It would be very difficult to have 9th grade cheerleaders get into the high school pep rally 10 or hopefully 16 times a year or more. Yeah. You caught that, didn't you?
And I'll just step in. One of the things that I told both sets of parents is, just like courses and everything else, you can have anything you want, but you can't have everything you want. And so our goal in doing this is to put it out in a way that we know we can execute, so that we can look at and learn from how we can expand in the future. So what we're saying no to right now might not be a no after we learn from our processes and systems that we put in place next year.
Another question is, this has been a question I've asked for a long time. It used to be this way. In junior high, there's not a cheerleading period that you're after school. Well, what you've done then, when you have it an after-school cheer, you eliminate all those kids that ride the bus home, which are, we're 60% low income. So you're taking every low income kid that wants to be a cheerleader away. It's only those that can afford it that don't ride the bus. So my question is there going to be something in the junior high, maybe a dance class to help with drill team, and maybe a class for cheerleaders that's not after school, that everybody can participate in?
I love where you're thinking. And that's something that we can definitely look at and study. But as we go into next year, that is not our plan. But
it's something
we're
to look
definitely
at.
open to looking at that, because the assumption is, obviously, if we want to build better programs, the early exposure helps.
Well, and you want to give kids a chance too.
Choose.
There's 60% of the people, all the kids that ride the bus don't have a chance. And I don't think that's fair. The last thing is since I've done this, since cheerleading is now UIL, are you going to make them pay for all their equipment? Because football and basketball gets all their equipment, but cheerleading and drill team, like I did, had to buy at least $1,000 to $2,000 a year for them to participate in drill team. So is any move to help offset those kids that are in those programs?
Cheer is on our uniform replacement schedule, but the amount of money that we provide is about one uniform, and as we know, those cheerleaders get multiple uniforms. So I certainly understand the point you're making. We would love to be able to provide multiple cheerleading uniforms to those kids, but at this time, we're not budgeted for that. We'd be happy to request that. But I certainly understand your point. We don't ask the football players to buy their own uniforms.
Well, when I'm at the grocery store and they keep asking me this question every year from different people, it's hard for me to have an answer. You know, when football and basketball get basically everything, pretty much.
Yeah, they're not having to buy their own uniforms, that's for sure.
Yeah, so.
Yes, sir.
Sure help me when I go shopping.
Yeah. And I can tell you, we continue to look at, all of our fees and things that we're asking of all of our parents, regardless of their income level, so that we can make sure we're not excluding people.
Thank you.
So Brandon, I just have one question, and forgive me for not completely understanding. When we talk about pilot programs in this district, it's sometimes one classroom, one school, then it rolls out. What do you mean in this case?
So for instance, while it might be a great idea to roll this out as a full scale, we're going to allow every freshman to march. The financial commitment to that is something that we're, without having done it one time, our first time, it had the logistics in place, and then the financial ask of that was just something that we didn't think was a really good idea to start with. And so it's better for us to execute effectively and scale versus to go all in and have a set of problems and a financial commitment that was a burden on the district far before it had to be.
Okay, I guess a follow-up question to that is, when you say try out and scale, at some point will there be, we expect X number of students or 1%, a certain percentage of ninth graders participate, and then eventually after a rubrics is met, we'll roll this out? I'm trying to understand what the difference between implementation and pilot is at this point.
To me, this is a little bit like being in the district as long. In the early years of athletics, we pulled up just the kids who made varsity to see if it was viable. So that's kind of the plan that we're looking at going forward. When we're talking about financial, sometimes these require a second instrument for marching band. You know, if you're a French horn player, you're marching mellophone. What Dr. Johnson was talking about is allowing us to make sure that this is successful on a small scale in a situation where we can give those kids what they need,
Right.
and then move forward. In terms of the pilot, we're limiting this to less than 10 per junior high campus. Central will have more because we want an equal number at Bell and Trinity. And those students are going to be our student musicians who are already achieving on a high level at ninth grade, that they're already making the high school region band. They have the body awareness to be successful in marching band. So it's going to allow us to do what the athletics did 20 years ago when they pulled up those select kids.
Gotcha. And
So
Mr.
is
Fielder
this-
would be the same as that in athletics?
I'm sorry?
Would that be the same way for yours as well? No.
I don't believe so. We're talking.
Oh, okay, I got it. I'm there. Got it.
Yeah. So on the band kids going up to the marching band, is that going to be based off of the band director recommendation, or is every kid going to have an opportunity to try out, or are you going to be selective in terms of?
Every student who, and we want to make it very clear that the beauty of this whole program, I think, is what Dr. Johnson was saying, is allowing children to have more choices. If I have a great athlete and a band student, I don't have to pick. I can go off campus for athletics and still stay in the junior high band. Anyone who wants to try out for those spots has the ability to do it, and they're going to coordinate a system to where it's partly how they play, it's partly about body movement, because like you heard, sometimes when you put them on a field and you have them marching fast across the field, it just doesn't work out. So it's going to be a composite audition, And we'll make sure that those kids who are doing it have the very best experience, because we know they're going to turn around and be the speakers for these programs at the junior high.
Yeah, I just know that the high school band directors are so busy anyways, that if you had, 50 kids who wanted to try out and you had to go through all those auditions, it's gonna take a lot of time and,
Look at those faces. They're excited
good.
about it.
All right.
Are there any other VPA programs that are not a part of this plan? And I'm thinking of the audition programs for choir for Trinity and Bell.
I'm so glad you asked that. So we are really approaching this as things that are not available on the junior high campus. And the one that was not mentioned is show choir. And I approached both of those directors, and they have so few sophomores that make that program, it's mostly juniors and seniors, that both those head choir directors have said, we're going to wait and watch a year, and then next year we may be coming forth with, we're opening this up to choir now.
Okay, good, thank you.
Everything else is offered at the junior high level, and there is no plan. If it's available to students at the junior high, we aren't offering it at the high school.
All right, any more questions?
So I would just like to commend you all. I think the way that this is rolling out, especially with the parent outreach, I think is really top notch. So thank you for doing it this way. I think getting more information out is always the better option. And in this instance, I think you've done a really nice job. So thank you for that. The last time we talked about ninth graders was January of last year. At that point in time, we were going to implement a competition committee that would look at voting on or pulling up ninth graders onto our varsity teams. Is that still a component of this, or does this completely supersede what we talked about a year ago?
This completely supersedes that. What we were doing, what we were talking about in January going into this fall, is for the first time, we had always, for 25 plus years, we'd always allowed freshmen in football, basketball, boys and girls basketball, volleyball, girls soccer, freshmen that were good enough could go up to the varsity. They could either be on the freshman team or go up to the varsity. They could not play on the JV team, because if we took all the kids from to put them on the JV or the varsity, the freshmen would be depleted. So that was the change we had this year, as kind of a step one into what we're going to do next year, and that with your blessing. But the difference then is that with this new plan moving forward, these kids are all going to be at the high school, so they're going to either be able to play on the freshman team or the JV team or the varsity team. And like I said, prior to this year, those kids could only play on the freshman team or the varsity team. This year, that competition committee you were talking about, we had that in place, and honestly, we didn't. There weren't as many kids pulled up as we might have thought there would have been. But the reason we had that in place is because we didn't want our JVs filled up with freshmen, and it was not. Thankfully, that was not an issue at all. So. Kids primarily played on the freshman teams with a couple on the JV and a couple on the varsity on a given sport. But no, this is by bringing everybody to the high school, the kids will play according to their skill level. They'll land exactly where they belong.
Okay,
just like the other school districts.
Even the freshmen who may play varsity, there's not a competition committee component to it. It's just the coach's decision. That's correct.
Okay. Just like basically every other school district in the state and probably in America. Yes, sir.
Okay. So this was allowed to be, or we kind of moved into this direction after the decision by UIL in June. But I do want to be fairly precise in the language that we're using in what happened in June. It wasn't an approval by UIL, because there's not an affirmative vote that they could then vote against us at a later time. This was an acknowledgement that our plan falls within their parameters.
That's Dr. Mark Cousins, the director of UIL, Have y'all seen the email?
So what we had last year was they told us, we told them what we wanted to do, and they told us we could not do it. It violated UIL rules, Constitution contest rules. And so we came back with another request, which was the request that they approved in June. And they approved that request because it did, according to them, it did fall under the contest rules and regulations. So while we didn't necessarily have to seek approval, we would have found ourselves in a really difficult situation with the DEC should somebody have come forward and contested us. So we made the request and got approval up front so that we knew we wouldn't have anybody contesting, saying that we were doing something that was outside of the UIL contest rules.
Yes, we filed that away.
And I'd like for Christine to talk about her conversation with, because UIL athletics and UIL fine arts are different. And so I'd like her to talk about that.
And that conversation with Dr. Brad Kent was part of what spurred this forward, is because my question to him was, are these students allowed to participate with LD Bell and Trinity and then turn around in the spring and participate at the junior high level with their bands? Because we always want to keep that development going, and the answer was yes. We are allowed, just like if there's a ninth grade center somewhere in other districts, those kids may compete with the marching band and then come back to the ninth grade center. That's kind of the same umbrella that we fall under. So we did check with UIL for that.
Can you go to slide 9 just very briefly, please?
Can you tell me which one that? I don't have it.
Athletics department.
Right here. Okay.
So there's an asterisk next to gymnastics, and it says the gymnastics plan will not be changing.
Yes, sir.
What's the significance of that? And is that saying the other sports are changing?
Yes, sir. So the significance is that with gymnastics, they compete basically on a varsity level. So let's say a ninth grader needs to be able to play, needs to be able to compete at the varsity level if they're on the high school gymnastics team. So kids that are not on the ninth graders, that are not on the varsity level, they don't have that skill level yet, they're able to be on the junior high team, the ninth grade team, and our 7th, 8th, and 9th graders compete together. We have basically a in-house competition where our 5 junior highs compete against each other. 7th graders, 8th graders, 9th graders, they're all competing against each other at the junior high level. Except currently, if they see a freshman that can compete on that level, they pull them up to varsity, and that won't change. It'll be the same. The difference then is there's no such thing as a junior varsity gymnastics team at the high school. So that's why that is a little different than those others that do have JVs.
Okay, thank you.
All right, any other questions?
No, Dr. Johnson has pointed it out multiple times, but I wanted to say that it does not escape this board that all of you in this room have put in a lot of time and hours on this, but also on the changes that we're making at the high schools. And we know that's additional to what you do every day, and we're very appreciative.
Yeah, I just wanted to say I appreciate all the hard work going forward, because I know this was a hard process to get through. And, this is night and day compared to what we were shown, a little over a year ago, where we had a lot of questions. But, thanks to the leadership of Dr. Johnson and Ms. Cumberledge and Mr. Fielder, and, the input of everyone here, we're excited about this, and we think this is something that's going to work, and we like the opportunity that this is going to provide for our ninth graders. So thanks for putting this together.
Thank you.
All right, item 6.04, interim assessment number 1, mathematics grade 3 through 9. Dr. Norgard.
All right. Perhaps not all students come to school for algebra, but eventually algebra comes for us all. So I do have a report for you this evening. on 3rd through 8th grade math and algebra. I'm going to give this group just a minute to. I can't believe they don't want to stay and hear about algebra. No? Okay. Okay. So our interim assessments does give us a look towards our strategic plan related to meets a master's grade level on STAR. Context, very similar. You have to think all the way back to, last year when I was here talking about reading. It was just a month ago, but it was last year. Many of the same things apply that I told you about the reading interims, that this is set up to be a whole year test. It's our first time using it. I do want to point out when we are talking about testing for a whole year in reading, main idea, summarization, those skills spiral, and it's just in the different grade. I'm now looking for main idea in a more complex passage. So math tends to have a greater impact on that. I didn't know that there were things to the right of that decimal point. There's just brand new stuff, not just applying it in a new situation. So we did see some things in the lower grades where when we really analyzed the test, we're like, they have not yet received this year's instruction on that. There were some students that were very successful, so those are our students hitting at the master's level. But there are some that we're just not to that point in the year. They haven't had all the instruction yet. Okay, so when we look at the data, we do have students testing in both English and Spanish. What does this mean to us? Because it's different. I'm not comparing it to last year's DBA, but we can to assess our relative performance when we look at our performance next to other districts in Region 11 that also took the same interim. We are outperforming our counterparts in the area, so we feel that this very much parallels the kind of separation we see in our STAR performance. So there's definitely consistency there. 4th grade, English and Spanish testers. Spanish, we start having fewer students testing in Spanish in 4th grade, so just that sample size is smaller, so down 1% below Region 11 is not particularly significant when you consider the number of students testing. 5th grade is our last grade that they might be testing in Spanish, and so usually the ones that are still testing in Spanish are frequently our newcomers, or they may have had interrupted formal schooling of their own in that first language. And then 6th, 7th, and 8th, they're all together here because these are all testing in English. And here's where we see, this is very much what parallels our STAR and our EOC data. We're into double-digit, and not just barely into the double-digit gaps above our counterparts. So again, what we're seeing on interim, while it maybe didn't look exactly like we've looked on DBA, it's that relative performance seems very consistent with our pattern of scores when we look at districts around us on STAR and EOC. Algebra, this is combined. These are both our advanced academics 8th graders and our on-level 9th graders. That's the way the data comes to us, so it is just combined here in this report for you. And again, largely outperforming others in Region 11, just as we do on the Algebra EOC exam. So just to try to look at a little bit of history for how these students, here's how they did on STAR last year as a group, as a cohort, and where have they landed on interim this year. The pattern is going to look very much like it did at reading, where we saw a dip as it approaches, meets stays fairly flat from last year's STAR, and masters we saw big jumps. So again, when you think to that part of they may be encountering items for which they haven't had instruction, or students that are masters are really jumping out there because they're showing us something they haven't, versus a student who is maybe at approaches, which again by TEA's definition is they'll be successful with support. Those are students that need intervention. When those students encounter things they haven't seen, by the time they get to STAR, they will have seen it. So they will likely be approaches on STAR. But right here at this point in the year, our approaches numbers fall off. So this is what you can see, the purple being the approaches dipping down, the blue meat staying fairly consistent, and the green masters going up. You're going to see this same pattern just with an additional grade level, because our 4th graders have only had 1 year of STAR. But you'll see the same thing even when they climbed in previous years from last year's STAR to this year's interim. There's that dip at approaches. So we are absolutely watching those kids and seeing what we can do, but it's just largely items they have not yet had the direct instruction. So we think we'll see a large difference when we get to interim number 2. Here are our 6th graders. So again, a nice climb at masters for them. The same pattern in each one of these grades. It's approaches where we're looking at that decline from last year's star. But we've got to watch where we are in interim two and where we land on star this year. I don't have the cohort performance because, as I mentioned, it only came together for 8th and 9th grade algebra, the way we received this data from Cambium. So I couldn't really get a clean look at the cohort data because they sat together in 7th. They were an 8th grade ADVAC kid they were with on level and ADVAC kids in 7th grade in the data. But that's what I have for you. Any questions?
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Could you name the school districts in Region 11 for me?
Can I tell you all of them or which ones participated in the?
Well, who were compared against?
Okay, I can talk with Gail, our assessment coordinator, and see what the report I can pull from Cambium does not have that. It tells me the number of students in the region that took it, but not from which districts. I will check with our assessment coordinator and see if she can pull that for us.
Thank you.
My only comment, Holly, is
yes,
just
sir.
please express to your team that these double-digit numbers compared to our other Region 11s are awesome. And we know that goes without saying that you guys have worked really hard on it. It looks really good.
Thank you. I will share that.
Any other questions?
Do I win shortest report for the evening?
Yeah, so far.
You did good. You did good.
Yes.
We don't go for algebra either.
Attendance boundary adjustments. Ms. Clark?
Okay, good evening. It is time to talk attendance boundary adjustment for Veridian. We're at that point where we need to reduce the enrollment at that campus. They're sitting at about 840 students this year. So this proposed attendance boundary adjustment will impact Veridian, Oakwood Terrace, and North Euless Elementary Schools, with the potential to impact around 94 students. So what we are proposing is to move the students from the Stone Creek neighborhood from Veridian Elementary to Oakwood Terrace starting next year. And then also to move students from 2 Post Oak apartment complexes from Oakwood Terrace to North Euless. And you can see that depicted on the map there. Interestingly, the students that live in Stone Creek originally went to Oakwood Terrace before Veridian was built. So we are needing to send them back to Oakwood Terrace. Here is the current enrollment for each of the grade levels at those 3 campuses, and then what the proposed enrollment will be. And you'll see that there's a difference in the numbers, and that's explained by, it'll come in on a later slide, but students that are currently participating in our schools of choice programs may elect to stay at Veridian, and we will let them finish out their elementary years there if they choose to do so. So the potential could be 40-something kids, but it's going to be less than that because I'm sure many will choose to stay.
All right, and that 6th graders, are they all staying? Or
6th graders, any 6th graders can stay at their campus they finished 5th grade at if they fill out the transfer and there's room at that campus, yes. So here's our timeline. Of course, the board report tonight, January 22nd. You will vote on this as an action item, and then immediately we'll begin our communication plan to those families. If you vote for this, with a letter to the parents, the website will be updated, FAQs will be updated, followed by parent meetings at each Oakwood Terrace and North Euless Elementaries on February 6th and February 7th for those students' families who are going to be attending those schools next year. So they can meet the principal, tour the building, feel comfortable with where they're going to be attending. Yes, rising 6th graders and students who are part of our schools of choice will be allowed to remain at Veridian if they apply for a transfer. There will be no significant change in the percentage of economically disadvantaged students at the 3 campuses, and all affected students will still be eligible for transportation, and also there will not be a change in junior high schools that they'll attend.
Are there schools of choice at Oakwood Terrace and North Euless?
There's not at Oakwood Terrace, and there is Suzuki at North Euless.
Okay.
Any other questions?
So based on our projections from our demographers and the development in that area and the capacity of Viridian, how long do we think this is going to be an adjustment that's going to keep the enrollment down enough to keep us under capacity?
Right. I think we should be fine for the next few years. We've looked at it. And I know that Dr. Harrington and Mr. Miner visited with developers out there, and they assure us that there's not going to be any future. Is that correct, Dr. Harrington? Am I saying that correctly?
No, there's no change to the master plan. We were concerned that they were converting some land that possibly may have been retail was going back to become residential areas. We were concerned that possibly the number of multifamily was increasing, and there have been no changes. So the original projection on Viridian was that building would always house it. Now, we are seeing a lot of growth there, but you know the whole back is age restricted, and so that won't produce kids. The apartments are very expensive, so that the yield is usually much lower, though we are seeing some kids coming out of there. But there's been no changes, but we're watching it very closely. We'll just have to continue to watch. Right now, we do feel good, but as Josh talked about, there is a plan. I mean, if something changed and we had to do something, there is an area that we have already looked at if we had to expand Viridian. But that would based on the numbers that were originally projected for that entire subdivision, we should be okay. But like I said, we're concerned. It seems to be producing more kids than they had anticipated. So it's forcing us to be a little tighter, but that's why we're making this last move. And again, though it's not moving a lot of kids this year, as those kids move through, it's going to create some capacity for them to continue to grow, and then we will have to watch.
Any other questions?
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Clark. All right, item 7.01, payment to Birdville ISD Regional Day School Program for the Deaf. Are there any questions on this item? Quarterly investment report for quarter ending November 2023. Are we going to make a report on that, or is that just for questions?
You have questions, or it's there?
Any questions?
The only thing I would say about that is you know, the feds have kind of leveled off on their increasing the discount rate, so, you know, our interest rates tend to follow that, so that we'll probably see going forward that flattening out and then, you know, rates coming back down. So our investments probably aren't going to perform, but as we say in West Texas, we're going to make hay while the sun shines. So.
All right. 7.03, financial statements for the month of November 2023.
All right, now for the fun stuff. Okay, financial statements, November 30th, 2023. Seems like eons ago when we last looked at one of these, back before Christmas. So, general fund, we have a fund balance of $160,735,400. That represents expenditures over revenues in the amount of $10,462,448. As I've said before, this time of year, or in November, we have more expenditures than we have revenue coming in because our tax collections haven't started hitting the books yet, but that'll change beginning, you know, this month. Those should start rolling in, and you should see that number flip significantly. Total expenditures as of 11/30, we're at 25.65% of the budget, which is right in line with where it should be this time of year. The general fund expenditure matrix, payroll was running $43,237,533, or 80%. Of course, we all know that will inch up as we go through the year. Utilities were at $1,022,059, or 2%, and then instructional supplies were at $975,184, or 2% also. Those those numbers again, like I say, the utilities will probably ease down to 1%. Utilities will probably end up around 2% year end. So right where it should be. Child Nutrition Services Fund. That fund balance is $6,904,073. That's revenues over expenditures in the amount of $340,713. My comments down there are incorrect. The revenues exceed the expenditures. This is kind of the time of year when those things flip. So the revenues with child nutrition, as they're starting to get their reimbursements, those revenues will start flipping the other way, where our revenues are more than the expenditures. So, and that's where we're at in November. Department's operating very well. They've finally gotten back to a normal amount of unfilled positions. We typically kind of hover around 8, 9, 10 positions, somewhere in there, and that's kind of where they're hovering now. So they're kind of back where they should be. Total expenditures as of 11/30, we're at 22.76%, which is normal for that budget. Debt service fund. Fund balance is $24,349,831. That represents revenues of over expenditures of $2,813,610. Our first debt service payment's coming up in February next month, $6,728,006. Of course, that second one, final payment, will be in August of $29,838,006. And the total debt service for the year is $36,566,012. The CK Pre-K Fund, that's fund balance is $443,174. That's revenues over expenditures in the amount of $253,698. The total expenditures as of 11/30 were at 20.65%, which is normal for that budget in November. Special revenue funds, of course, there's many funds packed into there. Total expenditures as of 11/30 were at 18.14% of the budget. Of course, this time of year, the expenditures tend to exceed the revenues due to the lag in reimbursements from the state. That really kind of happens all throughout the year. It just lags behind. But all those programs are tracking as expected. Campus activity funds, fund balance of $3,578,474. That's revenues over expenditures in the amount of $247,191. Those funds are performing as expected. The 2018 bond funds, as I mentioned last report, these we're winding these down. That fund balance is $1,508,302. Of course, that's expenditures over revenues in the amount of $514,060. Because all we're doing is spending out of that. We're not putting any money back into those funds. And of course, the remaining amount of the 2018 bond funds are being used up on the Bel Air rebuild. Technology still in November still had a small amount of that budgeted, but they should be just about worked through all that by now. So 2023 bond, or the Series 2024, is what they will be called once we issue those. These are just, of course, all the expenditures we're keeping track of as we're working through these programs we just heard all the information on earlier this evening. Expenditures, of course, exceed the revenues in the amount of $131,185 for the current year, but a cumulative total of $1,552,887. And of course, until we issue bonds, there won't be any revenue other than maybe some, we don't even have any interest revenue coming into this account. We have nothing to earn interest on yet, but that's going to change. And we're going to make hay while the sun's shining as much as we can. I look at that like free money. That's get it while you can. Locally defined capital projects funds, that fund balance is $37,819,682. That's expenditures over revenues in the amount of $9,523,073. These funds are currently being used for the remainder of the Bel Air Elementary rebuild, recent and upcoming new facility purchases and remodels, ongoing safety, Trinity and baseball, softball, all these various projects we've been working on, and we've had a lot, so. And then, of course, we'll bring any new projects to the board if we need to in the future, so. Any questions on any of that?
Any questions on the financial statements? All right, budget transfer and amendment request for consideration in January 2024.
I think this month we only had a $368 request. That's one of the, maybe the lowest I've seen. And that was to move some money from Function 21 to Function 13, I think. So in conjunction with the LEAD HEB program to pay for some substitutes for those teachers that are participating in that program.
All right, any questions? All right, thank you, Toby. 7.05, campus improvement plans, Mr. Streeter.
Yeah, happy to answer any questions that you'd like. One of the things that we are going to try and do next year, though, is bring the plans in October, or at the very latest, first reading in November. This year, with our data being later than normal, obviously that's done that, and then we did some reformatting issues. The other thing that we're looking forward to next year is that our strategic plan language will align better, and our plan for learning is going to align with the strategic plan. So I think that when you actually look at these next year, it'll be a little bit easier because all the words will mean the same thing in both places. Currently, the definitions actually look differently. But if you have any questions or concerns, I'm happy to address those at this time.
So do we have any indication from the state that they're planning on getting back on a normal schedule in terms of getting us data?
Yes, sir. We should have our data June, July. Mm-hmm. Which that will help us, obviously, get reports out faster.
Okay. Any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, it's time for the Mr. Curbo Show. 7.06, annual Microsoft licensing renewal.
So my 27-page slide will point out to you no.
Only if you have pretty pictures.
This is just for our annual licensing for Microsoft products, the operating systems and everything that we use that has a Microsoft license attached to it.
All right, any questions on this license? All right, pool repairs for 2100 Plaza Parkway property.
We contact vendors that were available on cooperative contracts to provide an assessment of the pool and the equipment there, and they went through that rather extensively. The recommendation from the vendor identified here in the recommendation, AquaRec, is for $142,750 to make those needed repairs.
All right, any questions on those? All right, 7.08, purchase of transportation vehicles.
We've been looking at vehicle opportunities to upgrade our fleet for transportation, and the decision was made to buy 2 Traverses to have passenger cars to help supplement our some of our transportation needs, and then two additional buses. And you'll see there, the buses. I'll note this is we have multiple quotes on those. The vendor recommended is not only the low vendor, but they can deliver buses within 3 months. The others are a 12 to 14 month lead time. So this becomes a good opportunity for these purchases.
The additional buses or replacement buses?
Pardon?
Additional buses or replacement buses?
Additional buses.
All right, any questions? Okay, thank you, Mr. Curbo. 7.09, change order number 01 to CSP 23-04, restroom and concession stand facilities at LD Bell and Trinity High Schools. Mr. Minor.
Just bringing this recommendation forward to you, and be willing to answer any questions you may have. I'll definitely give you as much information as I possibly could. Wanted to just to let you know that we, at the moment, even with this change order, I look at the overall budget as well, and so that just barely puts us over what we came for originally, and so probably to around the tune of approximately $7,000 over the overall budget. So just be willing to field any questions that you may have.
Any questions?
Have the substantial completion dates of January 1st for all items except for bleachers and press box, and February 1st for bleachers and press box changed?
Calculated today, we were looking at the days of weather delays, and right now, I wasn't able to get the exacts, but it would be to around approximately 20 so far.
For both January 20th and February 20th?
It pushes that date, approximately 20 days, we'd have to account into that, and so it would push it at least 20 days on that, yes.
On both of them, the bleachers and press box and?
All of them, yes.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So now we're looking at January 20th and February 20th.
Right, but right now, just so you're aware, we're ahead of schedule. It looks like everything will be finishing up right at the tail end of January. January 19th should be the substantial completion on the concessions and all the flat work. Press boxes are coming in kind of last, which is what we anticipated. So those will be landing somewhere between the 22nd and the 25th. And they'll stage just like we have the whole job. It'll be Bell baseball, softball, then Trinity baseball, softball.
All right. I still have my question about who's going to be using these new kitchen griddles and things like that, and what training and safety and stuff are we going to have in place for them, through the, because I know it's mainly booster people using them. So
I did reach out with Mariella in the child nutrition department. She stated that in the concession stands, if you are doing that, you do have to have a food handler license. So we would have to go through and start and look for the training for them to be able to do that. And so that's the next piece that we're looking into is right now.
yeah, because we're basically creating a little commercial kitchen in these concession stands.
This
Okay.
will, also what this does too is it brings us into compliance. We've been, however you would like to look at that, is we've been right on the edge. We've probably crossed that line a number of times, but however we have not, I don't see that would be continuing either, by the way.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that we don't miss any steps on the food service and safety side. So, all right, any other questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we're down to other business. 8.01, opportunity for board members to request items to be placed on future board agendas. Anybody have anything? All right, reviewed the board activity chart. Looks like everything has been covered.
Can I just make one request?
Yes.
The TASB grassroots meeting for Region 11 is being held at HEB at the BCTEA in February. So if you would consider attending that, that would be much appreciated.
What date again?
It's February, it's on Wednesday. Bear with me. I don't know, I gotta get to the right thing here. Yeah, Wednesday the 21st at 6. Thank you.
All right. We don't need a second closed session, correct? And I'll accept the motion to adjourn.
So moved.
We are adjourned.